Yeah, here today.
It is 7 o'clock on March 2nd, and I'm going to call the Utilities Committee meeting to order. I'll have a roll call. Ms. Durbin? Here. Mr. Richard?
Here.
We also have with us Mayor O'Leary, Auditor Satterfield, and Safety Service Director Ward. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And can I have a motion to approve the agenda tonight as published?
I'll make that motion.
I will second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we'll move right into the discussion items. The first one is the PCA, and we have two gentlemen joining us by telephone tonight, so we'll let them get started and they can get off the phone.
We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh.
This is Andy. I think Craig London is on the line. But he's from here from Municipal Power, talking about the changes in power costs the last several months. I don't know, Craig, if you want to just talk about that briefly, and then I can kind of dive into the PCA after that.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. So starting back in October, we did start to see some higher costs. The costs that we saw back in October were attributed to something called congestion, or the cost of moving power. We saw some transmission lines that were on planned outages, but we also saw some transmission or power lines that broke, that were beyond our control. That's something that happens on the grid that caused us some high costs. We also saw, especially the last couple of months, we've been seeing some higher market costs. And that can be attributed to several things. One, we had a cold winter, but also higher natural gas prices and inflation. So some of these things we're not expecting to continue to go forward in the future. The transmission line outages, we're already seeing those start to resolve themselves. We've also put additional hedges in place, so we're not anticipating the super high costs we saw in October, November, December to be sustained. However, then when we look at the prices that we saw in January, we're not expecting that high of prices, that big of cost disruption, but it is possible just in the new price environment that we kind of entered into here with pretty high natural gas and power prices, just the same as you can see at the gas pump.
Okay. Thanks for that information. We're looking kind of here just at a page that is cost of transport power to Galley, which is what you were just kind of talking about with the hourly congestion, and then just kind of because of that outage and the high price of that line. And then we're also looking at a graph that is showing kind of where our energy was coming from in January during the time of the cold weather and the one unit that was off. I think really the next one that we're looking at is the January 2022 day-ahead market energy prices slide that was showing the price of replacement power at 7 cents a kilowatt hour. And is that kind of what you were talking about, that you don't anticipate it to stay that high moving forward?
Yes. So historically, we've seen. So right now, when we're generating with our power plants, we're looking at a cost between 1.5 and 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And then when those power plants go offline for either planned or unplanned outages, typically we've been seeing the replacement cost of that power at 3 or 4 cents. However, there was kind of two outages in January. One of them was across the middle part of the month. And, we saw a little bit of cost increase from that, but not much because prices were in the 4 to 5 cents. But what really hurt us is that last week of the month it was very cold. We lost one of the units at one of our power plants. And so instead of buying from that power plant at 1.5, 2 cents, we had to go out onto the market and replace that power at about 7 cents.
Okay. And then the next page that we're looking at says January cents equals 0.9 cents per megawatt over forecast. So, and then I think it is kind of showing maybe what could be anticipated moving forward. So kind of the price just going back down over time. But tonight, I know that we're talking about the PCA, and kind of looking at adjusting the PCA rate here in town. So I know that that's going to be a big topic of discussion. So I just kind of wanted to, I guess, recap and make sure that, you know, we need to kind of raise that PCA rate to keep in trend with all of the other rising costs just in general, and to keep up with the transmission costs and all of that. I guess members of the committee, mayor or auditor, do you have any questions for the gentleman on the phone?
This is Mike Richard. Gentlemen, so what I'm getting is that going forward, are we going to be looking like so much of the other energy issues that we're either experiencing or watching? Is that a forecast is going to translate into our cost for power?
Yeah, so some of our costs are hedged. You know, we do have some power plants. And some of those costs, like debt service, things out of those power plants are fixed. However, we have some of those costs out of our power plants are not, and those would be subjected. You know, when we look at with inflation and wages going up, they could be subjected to that. Higher natural gas prices out of our natural gas plant. And then when we look at things like the transmission bill, we have to pay First Energy for the right to use their power lines, and we've been seeing that cost alone has doubled in the last 5 years. Even before everything that we've seen in the last year and a half, you know, that's doubled in the last 5 years. So now we do have some things that are on the positive side where, you know, capacity costs are supposed to be going down this year. We have Blue Creek Wind contract rolling off, which will help a little bit. So we do have some things helping. But in general, there's a lot of upward pressure right now in a lot of different, you know, the transmission area specifically, as well as you know, some of the fuel costs and market prices.
Thank you.
One of the connections that I would want to make, if I might, Kara, is in August, Sawville, it's kind of a handoff maybe to Andy on this, recommended a certain increase in the PCA, which was tabled, rejected, it wasn't implemented. One of the things about the AMP presentation and questions you may have on that is this transmission cost increase. Let's see if I can. When Sawville did the PCA projection in August, it did not anticipate, question mark, Andy, did you anticipate the spike in transmission costs that we experienced in November and December?
No, that's you know, as Craig said, it's kind of an unplanned outage. That's not something new. Craig could probably explain a little better, but my understanding is, you know, it's kind of maybe a double contingency outage where they had, you know, transmission line go out, and then they had another issue with another path. You know, it's all not fault by AMP, but, you know, still things that are needed to transport the power from Illinois or to, you know, over to Gallion. But no, we didn't know about that, no.
Right, so that the actual difference between what the AMP power bill is and what we were collecting, PCA or otherwise, was greater than you anticipated, correct?
Yes, yep.
So I only point that out because there's been discussion among committee members, I think, and sort of generally, that we just forego what was recommended in August and look maybe going forward at the recommendation that was made more recently. And I just wanted to point out that the difference between what we would have collected had that PCA been implemented, and what we really paid for the power is in the neighborhood of $125,000 to $130,000. So, if you will, the loss, I know that's a loaded word because nobody who paid their bill feels like it wasn't enough. But the under collection, if we can use that term, which is also loaded, was more than what Sawmill anticipated for the last quarter of the year than it actually turned out to be. Anyway, that's what I get. Yeah, go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
Sorry if I interrupt here. So, I have the letter from August because I thought I'd add a little bit of flavor to this. So, that quarter cent charge that recommended back in August of last year, that was the what I call the reconciled. The PCA formula looks back 6 months and looks forward 6 months. So the forward 6 months, it looks at that and says, well, this is what the charge is, and then if the past 6 months under collected, well, then you add that onto the charge, and then vice versa. If you over collected, you credit that, so it lowers the rate. So I want to call the projected PCA rate for the last 6 months of last year, roughly, would have been about 0.6 cents. But at the time, you guys were over collected. And those last several months of the year obviously flipped that complete opposite direction. So as far as costs, if you look at just what the underlying costs to Galleon were, you ignore the over-under collection that occurred. If anything, the cost, from 0.6, which is kind of the unreconciled PCA last 6 months, to where what I'll talk about here in a second, it's actually lower in 2022. So I know it makes it confusing because there's a lot of moving parts, and really what it comes down to is your costs have actually went down for this year compared to where they were the last 6 months of last year before this year. So when I get to, I don't know if you want me to go into that now, or maybe that'll make some more sense if I explain the next 6 months is looking like.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, what I sent here, I guess it's about a month ago, is showing that, the reconciled PCA, which in this case, you went from an over collection to an under collection in the last 6 months because of those last several months of last year, 3 months or so. So that 0.7 cents, I'm rounding it, but 0.7 cent PCA charge that was in the letter, that's the reconciled PCA, and that is what we think your costs are for this year, plus what was not collected from customers because of the increase in costs, in the last 6 months. So, and the reason I say that is that, last I heard, I know there's still some reconciling being done with the finances of the electric utility. I don't know if that's been resolved, but, based on, my knowledge of, doing the last rate study and knowing kind of where, at the time when we did the rate study, where your kind of targeted fund balance, minimum fund balance should be for the electric system. I think it's around $2 million or so is kind of the targeted minimum fund balance, guideline for the electric utility. The last time, I think it was a year ago, that I, had got on a Zoom call with you all, and some of those that, aren't in office anymore, but, they, I think it was a year ago, and I think at the time you guys were sitting around, I think it was $4 million in the electric utility fund. So I don't know what that exact number is today, unless that's been resolved. But if you're sitting that much above kind of where the minimum target fund balance is, I mean, just my opinion is that the best course of action is to at least try to collect this year's costs. But everything above that, if you under collected the last 6 months, that will continue to carry through in the calculation, so it doesn't get lost. But you kind of have some flexibility there. So if the thought is that, you want to go with, well, we want to try to at least be collecting and be flush with our costs this year for what's projected, then we can do X. But then everything above that, we can keep reviewing it and see where it heads and decide what to do with that down the road. Especially if you're, I mean, the whole point of the PCA is to keep the utility whole. You know, years ago, you would have had a fixed contract for multiple years. It didn't really fluctuate. But when the open markets came around 20, 25 years ago, you had more fluctuation in your power costs. So you really needed something to where you don't have to go back and adjust your rates every year. You have this adjustment that helps you try to keep the utility whole over time. Have to go back and change rates all the time. So, and I think the charge for the next 12 months, and I'm saying 12 months because I'm planning it over a 12-month period, but it's still, every 6 months you review it to kind of see where it's heading. It's, trending one direction or the other. But I'm showing that now this changed a little bit because I think we probably missed a month in, the last billing, but it's looking like, for this year, it's probably about 0.34 cents is what kind of this year's projected cost would be for the PCA, which is, little less than half of that 0.7 cents, which is the fully kind of reconciled PCA. So I mean, that's kind of where we're seeing that, if you're at that level, I mean, at least you're not getting behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Of course, yeah, we can't control what happens in the next 6 months. There's clearly been, even if you take the transmission, issues out that have been mostly resolved, if you take those out of this, there's been a fundamental shift the last 3 or 4 months. I mean, natural gas prices have increased a lot, which affects the market price of power, and you don't really have control. I mean, that's just a piece of your portfolio, but it still has an effect on your rates, or on your power costs. So, those things, unless something changes, which, you've probably all seen the news, there's a lot of things going on right now. And it doesn't seem to be trending in the right direction, at least not yet. But, it still seems sustained to where it's a little higher than, where it's been the last several years. So, if you wait and you get behind the 8 ball on it, you might have a much larger increase that needs to be done at some point. So it's kind of that fine balance, at least that's the way we see it. I mean, because, we're looking at the total health of utility on top of just the PCA formula. I mean, those are two things that kind of go hand in hand, but, if you're flush with cash, you have that kind of discretion to, kind of split the middle and say, well, we want to at least collect our costs, and then, everything above that, we can continue to review it and then decide to make adjustments down the road to, collect those costs as needed.
That makes
It's
sense.
still a lot. Does anybody have any questions about what I said? Or?
I think you explained it well, and I feel like I have a good understanding kind of how you come up with those numbers, just, in reviewing and forecasting. And I appreciate also that it's not just the PCH, but also the health of the overall balance of the fund that you look at when you make these recommendations. So I appreciate that, and I think that the explanation was clear as far as I'm concerned. Mike or Paula, do you have any questions?
No, I know how the PCA works.
Eddie, this is Mike Richard. So the only question I really had was, I was looking at your letter that you referenced from January 27th, or in that neighborhood anyway, about the recommendation for the 0.00693. So you're saying, well, at the back end of it is actually a 0.00377 for the forward reconciliation recommendation. Now, what you said now you did mention that things had reduced. So is your contention then that going to at least recover the costs that we currently or believe to be future the next 12 months would be more of a 0.0034? Did I understand that right? As opposed to
Close. So the 377 that's at the back of the letter,
yeah,
that's actually, I'll call it kind of the adder that's being the reconciliation that's being added to what the current costs are. So that's saying that that's really what was under collected, looking backwards.
okay.
The forward-looking one is on the second to last line. It's a 317.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
okay.
But that included an extra month, which now we're in March, so I think there's probably 1 month less of election period, so to speak. So that affects that, that rate a little bit.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
So, but generally the 0.3 to 0.35, you're going to be, in the range of, because obviously the projections are not perfect. I mean,
Right.
but at the same time, we tried to adjust for, what kind of increases we're already seeing, and everyone's. I don't think it makes you feel any better, but everyone else is feeling the same pain. I mean, we work for a lot of municipalities in Ohio, and they're all seeing these higher market prices. But at the same time, it's good that they only have a certain piece of their portfolio open to the market. Otherwise, their whole portfolio would be going up that much. So,
Right.
instead of seeing 20% increase, they're only seeing 1 or 2 or 5%, which is still not preferable, but it's better than 20%. So.
Right. Well, the other question I had too was when you did the PCA recommendation, was that any of the issue with the transmission that we experienced or AMP experienced in December factored into that at all, or was that kind of I can't pronounce it, unusual situation?
Yeah, I'd say that's an unusual situation. The only way that that's really reflected in the numbers are the reconciliation, because that's looking backwards to see,
Okay, sure.
did you collect your costs or not. So that $391,000, which is equivalent to the 377 per kilowatt hour. That's the main cause of that is the increased cost in the last 6 months. But going forward, the increase or what was kind of added to the power supply projection was more just to reflect market energy prices being sustainably higher than where they've been the last 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Well, I know with RPCA here, per ordinance, we have a review twice a year. So it gives us kind of a little bit of advantage in the sense that we can at least look at this on a 6-month basis as opposed to a full 12-month basis. And given the volatility of the market right now, that actually is probably a good thing.
Yeah, because if things settle down in the next several months, you could have the opportunity to lower. Yes, is that what you were referring?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, that's correct. Yep.
I have a question. This is Paula Durbin. Does the climate change that's going on, does this factor into your projections? And do you look at past weather and how exactly do you come up with this? I know it's the markets, but is the weather a factor in the projections that you come up with?
So I'll probably have Craig comment on this a little bit because they do a lot of the underlying projections. And the short answer is, weather does have an effect on what the market prices are because it can affect the price of natural gas. When there's a colder winter, and there's less and less of, natural gas available, that drives supply and demand. It drives the price up. And most of the, what I'll call the peak generators that, generate during times of higher peak, a lot of them use natural gas. So it's kind of a direct pass through to, what the market, what you end up getting charged, for power. But Craig, do you have any thoughts or input on that?
Yeah, I'll just say as far as weather, we use average weather, so we forecast an average winter, not a warm one or a cold one. Same thing with summer, we use an average, and those averages are from NOAA, and those are updated. They actually just got updated. They get updated every 10 years, and they actually just got updated last year, and most of them got revised higher with the weather that we've been seeing here recently. So those go into the forecast for energy usage. As far as forward market prices, we use what the market is currently trading at as our forward market prices, and that can change depending on when we do it. But so we don't try, especially for the 5-year budget, we don't try to come up with our own forecast. we use the cost of what the market values power at for the next 5 years.
And Craig, that's in that forward market price. That's also, even though it's dependent on where prices are today, those are differentiated by month, correct? So
Yes.
power prices are typically higher in January. They're going to be higher. If they're lower in March, they're kind of a pattern. It still follows that pattern, correct?
Yes, and so in fact, if you look at one of the slides, I think you guys have those that I sent over, and it shows that 9 cent in January, and you'll see how it kind of varies by month. And so, yeah, we'll see, and that's cost. That's your overall rate, not necessarily your energy usage or your total dollars. But you'll see there's a seasonality impact of that is higher costs and more usage in the summer and winter months.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Karen, man, one more thing, or another thing, put it that way. My expectation, the 2.8 million, I believe Andy said that is frighteningly low. That is in the gas gauge world. That's when the light comes on and tells you to go get more gas. That's way low. My expectation, it's not a guess, my expectation is that we'll come in between 3.6 and 4 million when the auditor gets everything reconciled, gets all the bills that have been made posted. My hope, my expectation is it'll be around 3.5 to 4 million, not dipping down to 2.8, which I think is, like I said, playing it pretty close to the minimum.
I don't have any other questions.
I'm fine.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in by telephone and answering those questions for us and kind of, giving us a little bit more information on this and a great explanation. So thank you for your time this evening. I really appreciate it.
No problem. You're welcome.
Not a problem, appreciate it. You guys letting us talk.
All right. Good night.
Go ahead.
So
That was pretty cool.
You're working
Good job.
yeah, we worked together.
Well, that's Tasha's little machine. They had to train me on it today, so thank goodness they are good trainers.
That worked very well.
Okay, so I think after talking to those gentlemen, I think we definitely have recommendations of the two different options that we have to kind of go back and recoup the uncollected monies from the previous months and then make a correction going forward, or we can just make the increase for the next projected time period. I think it makes sense to keep the balance of the fund healthy and to not stress it.
I mean, the full recommendation was a .00693. But yeah, I'm kind of, now that I've talked to him, I'm kind of leaning to, like you're indicating, of the forward one, at least for now, especially since we will visit this again in August. I would say that we do need to at least adjust it to where we can take and recover the, as it stands right now, the future costs that would be coming in. What would that be? What was it?
3, 4.
Yeah, it was
Take it out to 4 digits.
yeah, it's like 0.0034, whatever. 4 digits or 5 digits, I think it was. Cause that's what I'm basing it on what they've listed here. So
What is that? 3, 4?
It was
It basically comes up 0.034.
0034.
There you go.
I would say, for now, that would be a wise and prudent thing to raise that. And again, this committee will visit this again in August. If situations warrant and it softens, then we can return it to where it was before.
Tom, is that kind of,
It's really council's prerogative. I think it is, I like that lesser amount a lot better after hearing the explanation.
okay.
Yeah.
So, it's, the rule of thumb is if you just take 1,000 kilowatts or any of the elementary school math, that'll give you an idea. So if you use 1,000, we're talking about $3.40.
Right.
If I were on the receiving end of that, I would probably say thank you. You had a basis to raise it twice as much. So,
Do you think that that's appropriate?
The only question that I have is that what is the acceptable loss from council to the electric fund? And what you're saying is an acceptable loss is $390,000 over the last 6 to 7 months. You chose not to raise it in August.
Right.
So you've depleted the fund by $400,000. Is that acceptable based on the rate or based on the balance? We still haven't entered the numbers in, but I can tell you 6 payments have to be entered into the system. If you look back at the information that I gave you at the last council meeting, which is the cash statement at the end of the year, which showed that $6 million in encumbrances. Of that, $5.4 million has been paid to AM that will come off the books in the next, hopefully, week or so when we're starting to start whittling into plugging in the numbers from the ECHs. And then it was an $865,000 payment in January for the December bill. So that was actually in 22's PO. So that basically leaves that $6 million into a $600,000 open encumbrance, which incorporates several of the bills that haven't been put in there. Eunice and I were looking at it today, trying to whittle that out. But that $6 million, basically that $6 million goes to $600,000 or $500,000 plus or minus in the next 10 days.
what was the unencumbered cash at the end of the year?
That was around 6.02.
Unencumbered, not the.
9 million. So the cash, at the end of the day, cash balance doesn't change. If you look at the far right at 3.4 million, it's roughly in that area.
That's where we'll.
If we plus or minus out, probably 100,000 maybe. Maybe not.
$3.5
million.
That's probably where we're gonna be at the end of the year.
Correct.
So it's not a matter of wagering or guessing. I think when you look at what Brian said, the encumbrance is gonna go once those payments are posted, most of that will go away, and then you've got the unencumbered cash balance that's unencumbered.
So that takes me back to if the committee believes that that's an acceptable loss, I firmly believe that we are prudent to collect what we're going to bill and not move backwards. And that's where if you talk about the 0.34.
That's what
I agree, I understand, but I think that's the least that we need to do is to make sure that we stay even with what we're billed.
Well, and to add to that, Brian, too, is that it'll give your department the opportunity to get all that other encumbrances and such. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, but you're right, you're putting it on paper, but what I'm telling you is I can assure you that 5.4 million of that has been spent.
oh, yeah,
Just in these
I believe you. No, I truly believe you.
It's not, I can't put it on the report yet and because we have important information. So.
Well, like I said, I think that based on the information that was given, which I'd like to praise those gentlemen again, because this is not by any stretch of the imagination. I've sat on this committee for 7 years now or so, and this is never, ever, ever an easy work through because there is so many working parts on it. But having said that, I think that it is prudent to raise the PCA at least to the next review to the .0034 as indicated by Ms. Hall and the gentleman from Saltville.
I have a question. When was the last time the PCA was raised?
Year and a half?
Yeah, it's been a while. Well, it's always been reviewed,
Right.
and every time it's been reviewed, other than I don't remember the month or the beginning of last year, but I know in August we had a recommendation of the .002. 5 actually.
Which we deferred.
Right, which we decided
that,
at that
Aaron?
point in time, it was we wanted to see what the next was gonna come up.
So from,
So Nikki has the date.
But other than that, it's been, matter of fact, it's been zeros, pretty much been zeros all the way up the line, other than,
All the way back to August of 19, we've not made a change to the
Correct.
PCA. With that said, we have a rate change in the customer charge in February of 20, but we haven't changed the PCA
right.
for 3 years, nearly 3 years.
That's a long time.
So we do have an ordinance here,
It'll be number 18,
18, okay.
and I just need to know the amount to plug in to,
So it'll be the .0034.
0.0034, okay. And both spots in the, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth whereas, then the first section 1.
So we need a motion of, and I'll make that motion, 2022, what number was that?
18.
18, and make that notation in the appropriate spots in the ordinance to increase the PCA to point as per recommendation per 0034 and move this on to full council for consideration.
well, I think it should be brought before the full council, so,
Paula, it's always brought before full council.
Yeah,
It's always brought before full council.
well, I know that.
I'll go ahead and second the motion and we'll just move it on to council.
Yeah, we
We're just gonna
take a vote.
So,
Yeah.
Mr.
Pardon me?
So,
She
Make a
seconded my
motion.
motion.
Mike made the motion to move ordinance number 2022-18 and I seconded the motion, so we'll take a roll call.
Okay. I'm gonna say no.
Okay,
I'd say yes.
and I say yes, so it'll pass through 2-1.
Carol, I hesitate to do this, but I'm going to mention that each one of these pages says business confidential, not distribution as a public record. So I'm not going to collect those, but it is what it says.
Right.
So if this is distributed as if it is a public record, you get an idea about how straightforward and honest some of the people are. So let's hope this stays internal as it was requested.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to discussion item B, sewer connections.
Okay, this is not quite an isolated issue, but it's probably best understood if we talk about a couple of neighborhoods that the situation applies to. And then what we found is that there are other individual like 1 or 2 residences. Yep. I guess the test case, what brought this forward was a situation out on Bucyrus Road near Lothbaum.
Yeah.
In which I think some of us know, and we've really not taken an aggressive approach. Some of us, as in the city, is aware of. We haven't taken an aggressive approach about making people in the city limits tie into the city sewer. Okay, so that's kind of how it's been approached. And there are less than a handful, I believe 4 residences, 5, 6 residences that are in the city limits but don't have sewer. Okay. Mr. Chartier is actually kind of the exception to this usually in that he wants to have sewer extended to his property. I say this somewhat facetiously, it's almost a lock and load in other issues or other neighborhoods. I'm in city sewer. My septic system works just fine.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
see,
So that's really what that really kicks off the thing. Here's a map, of the area that we're talking about. So I would just let me is that there is a neighborhood on Charles Street. Remember, a year and a half ago, I believe it was completed, maybe not quite a year and a half ago, an extension of the main on Charles Street and the construction of the lift station out there. Many of those properties have not been tied in as of yet. And that there's a plan to get them tied in, but that would be another neighborhood. I believe there's 15 or 17, maybe close to 20 tie-ins that have to happen out there. Now I'm going to point out that trunk line, if you will, is just been there for a year and a half. The situation out on Lothbaum and Bucyrus Road has existed since the Westmore Sewer Project was completed.
Is that part of that project?
Or
what's part of that project?
I think the city failed to force the tie-in back then. That's what but I don't know. I think the chief was here. I think he'd be the only person that was with the city but with the county. You had a county perspective on that. Not to blow you off, I'm sorry. But yeah. And I think a lot of us are aware, but nobody was with the city so as to explain why there were these 5 or 6 properties and until somebody's septic system begins to fail, it becomes kind of a situation that you don't aggressively enforce. So that's what I would say about. And so the issue is making council aware of those 2 neighborhoods and the fact there are a few other individual residences, and then the need to tackle them. So I'll just stop with that.
Basically, from the trunk line off of my septic system, basically runs all the way down to the creek down there, across Lothbaum and Evans there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is probably 1,000 feet. Well, I bought the house 2 years ago. And wasn't there a year. And everything backed up. And the neighbors behind me, which would be on Lothbaum, they're all on slabs, no basements. Well, I've got a basement, and there at some time, I don't know why, I've never seen such a thing, but there is a valve in my basement runs to my septic tank, or not my septic tank, but to the something, and runs to that trunk line or something. I don't understand what it is. I'm gonna have some digging to find out. But it our lines filled up so much, it actually, that pipe must be broken or something, cracked. Anyway, it followed that all the way up to my basement wall and was seeping in. And walk down the basement and smell sewer. So I started some checking on that and got with the neighbors. Well, the gentleman behind me just totally went irate on me. I just moved in, hadn't been there for 6 months. And he went irate on me and said it was the city's responsibility. Well, he made me look like a total fool. Because I got a hold of the city and had the city crew out there. And then figured out what we had to do. You know, I got somebody in there cleaning system. I was 400 feet down to the far end, for the one end where there is a clean out by a row of maple trees. So you know what that's doing, you know. And it cost $1,200 to get that cleaned out. And this neighbor just, I mean, I'm telling you what, his wife come out. Because the louder he got, the louder I got. Because, you know, I was new to the neighborhood. I didn't know nothing about it. And I ended up subsidizing him because he didn't have cash to clean it out, help clean it out. So, you know, but it had to be done. But I'm just saying, there's such a trunk line for, there's 4 septic tanks on that truck line goes down through there. The 2 neighbors beside me, which is Snuckelsberger and I can't think of their name with you, one of the lawyer's house right there in the corner. They both ran out to the front to what I was told was the city storm sewer. Okay? I was told to hook up I could hook my downspout because I had a very bad water problem down there. Anyway, they're hooked up to that. That's just a 4-inch tile. So, you know, 4-inch tile won't handle a whole lot. But that's how I come up. They was talking to people and trying to find out about this sewer system.
So yellow on this map are is the block that is in the city, but not on city sewer.
Yeah.
That's right. His house is the second one in on Lothbond. You get Mr. Petrie's former residence is at the corner. He's in the second one in.
Second.
Yeah.
West of Lothbond.
Yes.
He's on East Service Road.
Why wouldn't
Yeah, I don't do Cyrus Road.
Why wouldn't someone want to be tied into the city sewer?
I don't know. I'll offer up because they can have their needs met without paying a bill.
Yeah,
some of these
actually,
people have
that's what
water. That's really it is.
It
Their
is.
septic system works.
Until it does.
Until it doesn't, and then it starts bubbling up, and then that. So it has
The
been.
biggest problem is the trunk. Because it goes all the way down, like I said, it goes by those maples. Then when it gets down towards the creek down there, it goes through a patch of timber. So I don't know if anything was ever done to that. Somebody said that when they did that trunk line down there on that creek, there was some work done on maybe hooking that up to a tile. I'm not sure. You know, that's why I'm trying to find out.
Well, red on this map, that is our existing lines. And you can see that there's a gap there from the new county sewer, which is ours, and these yellow blocks.
Yeah,
yellow properties.
About
The
2
S-
houses away
pardon
from it. I'm only about 2 houses away from it.
Yeah, but I mean, that we've got the same environmental issue, if you look, for these other properties. And
Yes.
the estimate that we have to connect this, I don't even know what shape it is, it's so irregular shape, but from Lothbaum up to Bucyrus and down to where it stops, between Lothbaum and Evans, that's 78,000. So that's kind of the proposition on this one, to get everybody tied in, and this gentleman wants to be tied in. Some people will, well, I don't want to be tied in, I don't have a problem. But they're out of compliance, so we have that basis. I'm not gonna mention streets, there's a couple of other ones as we try to identify the universe of these in the city, still on septic. There's a couple of other isolated ones, like I mentioned before. And then we created a similar situation on Charles when we put the line into Granny's, basically.
So,
Yeah.
what do we need to do? Do we need to appropriate money to do that 78,000, or what can we do to get it going so that it's in compliance, they're in compliance?
I think, that the short answer is, there's nothing in the current appropriation to tackle a job this size.
Okay.
So a next step would be to look at a supplemental appropriation out of the sewer fund, which kind of ties into the next issue. It would be, we're in an operating deficit in the sewer fund. We'd have the cash, but it would really begin to draw down that sewer fund. So I would, want to make you aware of it and expect you might expect either through finance or, just coming, not through the committee, a request to supplementally appropriate $80,000 roughly for that. So that's really the takeaway. I think we're a little, we're talking about the fund balance in electric. I think the fund balance in sewer is slightly bigger concern. But anyways, the problems come up, the resident wants tied into our sewer, and it's more than just an individual problem.
Couple of us down through there, but if it's a possibility, I'll talk to some of the other neighbors and see what. But like I said, I know that me and another gentleman down there, and I would imagine the one that would give me all kinds of. It'd probably be interested in it.
Well, I suspect, but wouldn't want to promise on this Wednesday night, there'll be some sort of front foot assessment, which wouldn't be the entire cost of that, certainly, but that's going to yet to be determined. What would be your responsibility in terms of a tapping fee? But I don't want to get into that tonight.
Yeah.
I think what we would propose is to put the trunk line in to connect the two segments, largely at the city's cost, but I wouldn't promise there wouldn't be an assessment. You know, Julie, what the assessment was X number of years ago when they did a front foot assessment?
Actually, and then we just did per property, we didn't do per foot or anything.
Okay. Well, that might be how it would come out to you.
And ours was less than the capacity charge at the time, because we were able to pay part of the capacity charge for all of them.
Which is something,
Doesn't
capacity
exist
charge,
anymore.
that's something that has been eliminated. We don't have a capacity charge anymore. So we do have a tap fee, but there'll be some cost of the handful of property owners.
Yeah.
But the goal would be to have most of that common infrastructure paid for out of the fund. That'd be what I'd recommend to council.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing that.
Well, thank you for
The conversation.
giving me a chance to speak and give me some information I can pass on.
We gotta get fixed.
You're always welcome.
We gotta get
Okay, thank you. All right, good night.
Bye now.
So with that, I think now we can move on to discussion item C, the sewer rates.
I'll go ahead and start couple source materials as council gets, this committee and then ultimately council, decides how much or whether they want to raise sewer. One of the source materials is the rate study that was done by, I can think of the consultant's name, but I can't think of the firm. What's the?
UFS.
Yeah, okay, I believe you have that.
Sure.
Okay, so that had both a recommended water component, and I want to get into water, but we addressed water rates. We didn't do exactly what she said. Some other time when it's on the agenda, we can talk about that. In sewer, the committee decided to do nothing with the recommendation. And so last year, so all this stuff started about a year and a half ago. We got the rate study in, and we realized we couldn't just continue to drip away at the fund balance. So we had a discussion at the committee level. Decision was they didn't want to touch sewer. So as we got to 2020, the end of the year on 20, the decision was not to touch sewer rates, and then in 21 is when we raised the rates, whatever the dollars and cents were. That has slowly leveled out water so that the fund balance is able to hold its own, particularly because the administration was able to get $1 million commitment from the county for infrastructure. So if you go back and look at that, the recommendation was raise the rates this much, and oh, by the way, you got to borrow $1 million. So that's improved on water, so I'll stop talking about water. Sewer, nothing was done. And so when you look at the appropriation that was passed last winter, you'll see that there's roughly $2.3 million in expenses, but only $2.1 million in revenue. And so it doesn't take a business genius. I mean, somebody could run a pizza parlor could understand that if you keep doing that, you're not going to be in business very long. Now, if you have trouble with that concept of how that works like a pizza, I don't know what to say about that, but it's pretty simple, and we can't go on spending more than we're collecting. So, I'll wind down and say, where would you start as a committee? I think one place to start is what the consultant recommended. And we didn't implement everything that she said on the water side, but we took that as a bit of a pattern.
Right.
So I think that is one place to start. If you'll indulge me for a second, committee. The other issue that needs to be addressed in any kind of rate adjustment, and it can't be tackled by cost cutting or anything else, is the fact that we made 2 significant capital improvements in the last 5 years, for which we are simply paying the interest on the notes. And so at some point when revenue is adjusted, either you add a bunch of customers, unlikely, or you have to adjust the rate, that probably has to be, I would recommend that has to be taken into account, a way to pay down those 2 debts. And then the third thing to consider, besides just that structural deficit need to pay down the debt, is that there were some things done in the budget that I'm not sure all of this council is aware of, and I wasn't real comfortable about, but we were, as you'll recall, at the end of last year, moving pretty quickly to get something passed. And that was a decision to not charge the sewer fund and the water, but again, we'll stay on the sewer, for the electric usage that they consume. Okay, so that did a couple of things. One, it will add to what we just talked 20 minutes about, the fund balance of electric, because we aren't going to collect, we're going to, we meter it, but we're not going to make that charge. So when you look at the sewer budget, there's nothing in there to pay that. You'd see that in contract services when you start to get into the object codes. and that is in the neighborhood of $75,000. That a year that we're not gonna, we in this budget we didn't collect. The other one that I don't get, and I don't have as much passion about, is what are called indirect costs. And that would be a proration of the cost of the administration, roughly, Brian's office, our office, all the overhead. You guys are factored into that, council is.
Yeah.
And so we also do not have money in the budget to pay the indirect costs to the general fund. So if you want to get into the not triviality, but the detail of which fund didn't get indirect costs, we can get into that. So there is the operating deficit. There's the need to come up with a plan to tackle the debt beyond just rolling the notes. There is the foregoing the deferral of utility costs and the indirect costs. So those are four cost components that when you're looking at how much you need to raise rates to kind of steady the ship, I'd encourage you to look at each one of those components.
Would there be Mayor, would be a recommendation, or could you guys come up with a recommendation to the committee? I'm sorry.
I think that kind of whenever I had talked about it and thought about it, and kind of thinking back to the budget last year, and kind of what Tom was saying is we've already taken out everything we can take out of the budget to save the money. So if we equal out the sewer and the water costs this year, that would bring in, and hopefully enough to cover the operating costs and then have some. So I think that may be an easy way to say, this year we'll just make the sewer and the water at the same rate. And I think that that's what a lot of communities do, is it's charged at the same rate. And the sewer rate hasn't been increased for a long time.
It hasn't been increased since it was decreased.
Yeah. So
Seriously.
So I think it's been a really, really long time. So I think that, no one likes to think about raising rates, and it's hard to think about folks already struggling to pay their bills and all this and that. But I think kind of looking at the health of the city, and also, whenever we talk about these sewer connections and whenever we have citizens coming about backup in their basement, we don't have the funds to fix it. And we're never going to have the funds to fix it or the funds to pay off our notes if we don't raise that rate to at least match the water this year. And that's just my opinion, but I think that would be kind of a good starting place for this year.
I'd be interested to know where that figure falls, you know what I mean, in the actual figure. Cause I know I've seen the recommendation that came across from the study. I haven't looked at it recently, but I'd be curious to know what the office, mayor's office and them think that we should be at in as a starting point also. But I agree with you. The other thing is that to take into consideration is, yes, I just paying the interest on the notes for future projects, that has an impact on the availability or availability of any funding to cover any future things, because unfortunately, especially when it comes to sewer, that's highly corrosive. So everything that's exposed to that whole process really takes a beating. I know the one thing that we had out there and got replaced a few years ago was the screws, which are out there, which if you haven't been out there to see those things, they're huge. But the bottom line is they're all that's very corrosive. So I agree with you, Kara, that let's start with that to see where that figure comes up with. We'll have the discussion and look at the other thing also.
And I think one more thing, just Paul, real quick, is that, whenever we're talking about making a plan, having a plan to address issues before they come, so having an idea of staying on top of maintenance, it's hard to think about a plan of staying up on top of maintenance whenever you're not bringing in enough money to pay for the usage. So I think that that's something that we've kind of seen from the community and from other members of council that, a plan is something good to have to stay, a maintenance plan. I think to have that, we need to have a money fund.
Okay, so then, if I, go ahead, please, I was just gonna answer Mike's question.
So I'm sitting here listening. We don't have money to replace sewer lines that are bad, right?
Who said that?
Well, no, it's
Who
not.
said that? When was that said?
No, that's what I'm hearing here, that we don't have money.
No. And I was, it essentially is that we just didn't have the money appropriated, is what it said.
Okay, all right, next item. If you, we have some very old sewer lines in the city, am I correct?
Yeah, I would say, the sewer lines, really, if you know when the house was built, anything before 1890, the sewer came in afterwards. That was that South Union issue with the Brown situation. So, yeah, they are, the trunk lines, the plant was built in about 11.
Okay, so,
Meaning not 2011, 1911, so like there are a lot of trunk lines that are older. When the wastewater treatment was put in about 40 years ago, there was a interceptor sewer that loops the city. It's not as old as the infrastructure in the older parts of town, but go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to over-answer.
how many, have we put in any new sewers in any place in town in the last 5 years?
I'm sure, Nikki, I'm sure you could get that information.
We have, I don't know how many lineal feet or anything like that, but we've certainly replaced
And
Sections, portions.
sections
And we don't have a maintenance program for the sewer lines. You were saying we don't have the money.
Right.
I-
Well, I guess,
I don't, there is a maintenance program.
Okay.
I would say it is more reactionary than planned. However, last year, I think people will remember there was a major relining of it's 24-inch at least, the sewer line that goes through Heisey Park on the north side of the creek through there. That whole line. It used to be Russ Lott's Woods back there. That was relined, cleaned and relined. So yeah, there isn't the need to put new sewer in, but there is a need to do lining and or cleaning of the major trunk lines. One of the things that got cut last year in the sewer fund that, and I didn't get into this, what our plan is for addressing future capital needs. But it is to use our ARPA money and then to go back to the county and get what I believe is Gallion's second half of the money that they have from the county's ARPA dollars and do sewer improvements. So the money we've secured would go to the water plant largely. And then there are some collection or distribution system issues. The one that's in the forefront that was in the budget until the very last iteration, I think we kept the sheet because it's kind of moved $75,000 to the ARPA funds was the idea. And where that is at the corner of where East Church turns into Murray. There appears to be a problem with that sewer, a crack, not sure what word you would use. And so when we have high flows, it seeps out of that and runs out of that trunk line. So that's I think the need that is being identified is that there are old sewer collection lines that haven't had a lot of attention to and are only addressed when there's a problem. So this would be a $75,000 improvement. That's one we want to do this year. I'm convinced we'll get that done. Another big project, just sort of follow up, but since you asked the question, it's worth trying to give a sufficient answer. At Aspen, there were a couple of council members who were down at Aspen, they had some concerns. What we found are two things. One, storm sewer, which doesn't probably go to the benefit of the private people, because what was built and what was supposed to be there are vastly different. That's not the city's problem at all, it's the condo's problem. But the trunk line that goes through there and ends up going across the creek and right into the plant, it was root infested. And so that is so we've been grinding that. It's been sort of a slow process. It's probably one of the worst times of the year to be out there trying to do that. But I think attention to those trunk lines where we're having either reports of slow movement or we televise it and see it is something that I don't know, needs to be done on a more regular basis.
And I think that just having a healthier balance in the fund, it's not going to be, talking about, well, we had to cut this last year and this next year. Just having that increase will make it easier to make those decisions and not have to cut things every single year from the budget to keep up with the maintenance and preventative stuff as well as the reactionary.
So, Karen, Mike asked a question. This is 1 month in. This would be take the revenue report from January. So, 123 for sewer a month, and water is 162. So it's $40,000 a month. But equalizing it would generate, and we could all do that times 12, so you know what the gross revenue would be on an annual basis. Now if this were to go out of committee here soon, either the next meeting, go 3 readings, you're talking about April, might be May before we start collecting at that higher rate. So, it's a little, but if we're addressing it, I think that moves, I think that's a step forward. One more thing, promise, last one more thing is, I don't remember over 40 years the difference between water and sewer, there being a difference. They were always on a par with each other. And so that bringing them back on par with each other is kind of how it always was done. And it would generate, I think, enough money to really tackle those things. Eliminate the $200,000 deficit, start to tackle the debt, start paying for our electric, and do right by the utilities, and that's pay their indirect costs. Now, there ain't going to be a whole lot extra, but if you take that, and I can show you that, but I'll stop it.
Karen. Mayor, you stated twice that you don't want to replace meters, but isn't that a revenue loss?
I don't know when I stated that.
Yeah, you said it the first committee meeting in January, and then I asked you again at the second meeting or council meeting. You said you didn't want to have to let people know that you were replacing their meters.
That's not what I said. I said that what happens when you replace meters, we get requests. Gee, I think I have a problem with my meter. Without exception, what they find out is that meter that they were worried about is actually running slow. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you really want us to accurately then put a new meter in, you'll probably ask yourself why you did it. So I don't want to be understood as not in favor of meters. I think one should be cautious regardless of their education and their former elected status, misusing information. And I'm referring I don't want people to be panicked, and I think the revenue that you would get by the replacement of the meters is a lot lower than what you received, and I saw it on at least one other committee members. We could have a short debate on that because it's not even close. What I would ask you to do is to consult with the service director, other people. We're not going to release account information. It's not public record. But most of the locations, you read the letter, and so you get certified letter, you usually read it. The zero reads, okay, those, when you look at their addresses, we spent a lot of time on it, a lot of them are zero reads in the month you look at it. So let's pick one of our friends who comments, so he's not a public figure. Heath Watkins. Could pull that up and, that address has a zero read. That's because he doesn't use 800 gallons a month. Before you buy all that and all of our negligence, criminal negligence, sort of fun, you better look at your data. And so when you estimate, and you tend to tell people that we could collect $10 million, I don't know where that's coming from. The zero reads, I'm not sure what you would assume would be an accurate read.
I didn't say zero reads.
You didn't say it.
There's money, metered water, not metered, treated water, going down the drain at the water plant.
It's a totally different issue, Paula. You want to talk about slow meters, we'll talk about slow meters.
But that's
If you want to unpack, as they say,
So just to kind of bring it back full circle, I think maybe the original question was, do the meters in people's houses and businesses also meter sewer? Or do they just meter water?
I'm sure there's no way to meter sewer. Your sewer consumption is factored on your water usage.
So I didn't know that. So if we're talking about like wanting to make sure that we're collecting enough in the sewer department to make sure that we're doing all that, the individual meters would not reflect sewage use. So it's just like if I use 2 units of water, it's assumed I'm using 2 units.
So there are some of those on that zero read list that's used to justify the $10 million in phantom ghost revenue that are water only accounts. There's not sewer associated with it. A few dozen of those. Most of those are swimming pools that have that.
And like, so these
Because they don't want to pay sewer on the water they use for swimming.
And like these people don't pay sewage because they aren't
Yeah.
connected to the lines. So there are,
Right.
okay.
Well, I'd like to point out, Madam Chairwoman, that by Ohio Revised Code, this council or this committee is not really responsible in the regard to what the water is either adjusted or is maintained or period. That's Ohio Revised Code. So and I'd like to also point out that while it's true that many of the residents probably have old meter, I've got an old meter, but like the bear indicated, if you put a new meter in there, I'm kind of wondering where the idea was that suddenly that magically that those dollars that now that individual is going to have to pay is coming from. Because now you're actually going to get charged, that person is going to get charged for that exact amount. And if that person is senior citizen, all this other, now their cost has just gone up. So that's, but again, I kind of delved off there. That is strictly the privy of the mayors and the mayor's office. We are budgetary. And in that regard for that, not that we're not involved, but the bottom line is that this committee and this council does not set any of those stipulations. I just wanted to point that out.
I just want to add a couple more things on the meter. We, during the last couple of years, have stayed out of people's basements and have not gone and actively replaced meters. Okay. Over the last 8 years, we have replaced meters. So if you snapshot it, you will see some meters in commercial accounts that read 0. And you would see that we have replaced fewer meters in the last couple of years. But to take those two facts and then say, well, if all these meters were reading accurately, we would have collected $10 million. That's just not even close. And so, although Ms. Durbin did not say that, we all know what we're talking about. To sort of ask questions out of Mrs. Wade's letter and not address it, I'm not gonna put up with that. I don't have to, and I'm gonna respond to it. So, we do replace meters, okay? Now that most of, if not all, the COVID, we will get back at that. And we'll replace meters as we see something that's out of rye when we read them and when people ask for those.
Say that last part a different way. I
What do you mean?
understand it.
Well, we do replace meters. Now that we can get back into their base, most of them are inside. So as we go back inside, you'll see some of those residential and some of the commercial reads. But when the impression that's trying to be created is that there are a lot of dead meters out there that we absolutely neglect. What was it? We're intentionally, willfully. We found out a few years ago, you can't recall, but you could decide that I'm criminally negligent, malfeasance, whatever. That's what this is. So, you know.
So I think that's,
Excuse me, may I say something?
Whatever you want.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're correct on what you say, but we are also elected by the people. We have an obligation to the citizens in this town.
So is that gentleman.
Right. We all do.
So,
But I really did not get my question answered.
What was your question?
My question was, do you plan on replacing industrial meters, residential meters, or anything to see if we can get that water loss down?
Yeah, yes, when we identify a meter, there are exception reports. That's how they do it. It's like, well, this is not, you get what you pay for with our meter and billing department, in that you would be sort of surprised how much they know about the accounts. The various accounts, only 6,000. You could almost memorize them. So when they see a variance, they're quick to point that out. Whether we replace meters up, we'll go out and look at that to make sure that there isn't accurate, there wasn't a misentry of data, or there is a meter problem. So we've always done that. We'll continue to do that when we have the notion that what I won't accept is that there is any number of large meters, large use meters historically, that are being neglected or ignored. The commercial meters that read 0 aren't malfunctioning meters. They're just, you have to use 800 gallons a month to register one unit. So we'll continue to replace meters as are needed now that the COVID restrictions are off. That's largely the residential ones that we shied away from. So I hope that answers the question. Yes, we will. Yes, we have. We've got some, you want to get into data, the number of meters that have been replaced since we've been in is dwarfs that which was replaced the decades before. So it's trying to,
I think
we went off track there a little bit.
no, I mean, I'm going to answer their question. She wants to know if we replace water meters. Yes. That has very little to do with whether or not you're going to try to make up the operating deficit, come up with enough revenue to pay down the debt, pay for the electricity, and pay the indirect costs.
Okay, so I think that was a healthy discussion about the sewer rates. And I think that it seems like next month, maybe we can come up with an idea of, for sure, how we want to increase that sewer rate. And Tom gave us those numbers, about 40,000 that we're short every month for water. So I think, maybe over this next month, we can think on that and talk to safety service director and whoever else about any questions we have about those specific sewer rates. And next month, maybe come up with a number.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is look at the rate study that was paid for. What you're talking about is far less than what the rate consultant recommended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we didn't implement all on the water side, so when you bring them to a par, the piece of that's I don't have it memorized, but that she recommended more than bringing them up to the current water rate, didn't she? Changes in sewer.
I think the sewer increase was a little bit less than water.
Okay, so I think that time will give us time to reflect and look at that and make a good.
Well, like you said, to be able to ask the other questions, that will obviously come up too.
And then I think, I think tonight we talked about PCA, which is good. We started the conversation on sewer, and then after we get done with that, we can move on to water. I think just one utility at a time to keep all of our brains moving in the right direction. But is there any other business tonight?
No.
Go ahead.
Okay.
What I was going to say is we are actively working on I think everybody got the capital improvement plan, such as it is, the expected capital expenditures in all the funds, specifically water and sewer. And so when you look at what wasn't put in the budget this year, our hope is that we can succeed in going back to the county and getting, I know it's a little bit of a loose, but the other half of the money. They got 8 million, we're about 21 or 2% of the county. I kind of think that would be a couple $1 million. So we got 1 million in water. I'm hoping that they'll be responsive or receptive to making improvements at the sewer plant that will bring us up to where we need to be and keep us out of any violations.
And then whenever that ARPA money comes in, does the mayor, who decides how it's spent?
No, it's sort of kind of. I mean, everything is big enough. Everything we'll spend it on is over 50,000, so we'll have to 12, and we'll have to. We appropriated it, but not to specific line items.
Okay, so
Right, Ryan? If you look in the ARPA account, the 555 or whatever the number is in there, but it's not broken into different specific uses.
Well, the 1 million that you talked about from the county, that's ARPA money, right?
Yes.
Okay. Will that be used mainly to upgrade or try to upgrade the water plant?
Yeah. Yes. And there's a request for proposal from engineering firms to tackle 4 major things out there.
And we want to make sure that that was answered correctly, because the ARPA money current that we are getting is for the water plant. You talked about from the county for the sewer plant.
No, the second tranche.
Okay.
I know we've been here too long, Brian, when tranche comes off we got 550, we're gonna get another 550 later this year. The money we're anticipating, I'm hoping to use on sewer, the money that we've already secured from the
I
county.
heard it backwards.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we were on the same
So
page.
that'll get us the ferry tank, the line Slaker injector, it'll rebuild the clarifier, and seems like 4 major items out there.
And then already in the budget this year, we had for the ozone treatment.
Yeah, that crap is that stuff's gone away.
Okay.
That was a little bit ambitious, both in money-wise and from the technology, so what the plan is to, as we resubmit to EPA, to sort of clean out some of those things.
Okay.
But there is a plan to address the TTHM in the, that's why we're doing
All those things. The four
many of the other things. Yes.
One more question, please. Okay, we have the water that the drinking water is right at the minimum or whatever required by the EPA. Do we plan on making the water better?
Yeah, I think those four elements, our hope is that will send out a better product. And then once it gets in the distribution system, it's a catch-22, although sometimes that's overused. We have to flush significant amounts of water to keep the buildup of the TTHM in the low-use water lines from being a problem. So we're going to need to continue to flush. So the criticism, well, you treat that water and then you don't collect it, you dump it, that's going to continue to happen. One of the ways we're going to manage it so we're below the standard is by flushing systematically. And if we had had the dials accurately set, we wouldn't have had the last round of it. So we're still working on that. I think there's a possibility that we will put in our water towers an aeration separation system. Think of it as a slow-moving mixer that mixes, and that would be particularly helpful in the summer, the warmer weather months, where the heat builds up in the water in the tower, and it's a multiplier of that TTHM. So those were roughly priced out in the $100,000 to $125,000 range, and cautiously looking at whether to spend another $250,000 on the 2 water towers. So that's under study.
Well, the study that you gave me, you had a plan for $4,445,000 some odd dollars then.
Yes.
Now, 1 million is a long way from 4 million. I mean,
yeah, when you look at the 4 million, you subtotal the 4 million. One of the reasons that we're out in the marketplace looking for a new consultant is, if you read that in detail a couple of times to understand, at least for a layperson, we need to look for other consultants. Very unsatisfied with that. And so we're gonna, some of those 4.1 million items, there are 2 of them. There's the osmosis, I don't know if you have that there or not, the osmosis mat and the nanofiltration system. Those are 2 high-cost items that we don't think that we'll need. So, anyways, it's not going to be 4 million. Now, when you incorporate remediation of the reservoir, something that we haven't really begun to tackle in detail, we'll have significant money going into likely powers, some mechanical stuff between Amens and Amix, and possible, but I think some of the concerns on County Line Road and the dam, we hope to talk through those, and they may not be as expensive as has been estimated. But you're right, if what we aren't spending on osmosis and nanofiltration, we'll probably be spending at reservoirs. So the idea that we could spend up to $4 million in upgrading the water collection, filtration, and distribution system that wouldn't surprise me. I'm not itching to do it, but it might be that much, that 4 million. I hope that answered that question.
Well, is there any other business or? If there's no other, all right, if there's no other business, our next meeting will be on April 6th at 7 o'clock here in Council Chambers. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh,
Okay, then we're adjourned at 8:35.
When's Josh start? I was gonna say something. What's that? So we have a new superintendent.